Kiev's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, says the capital is planning to set up more than 1,000 heating points for the winter. It's a precaution in case Russian strikes disable heating systems further. Waves of attacks have disrupted power for many Ukrainians. Repairs have been swift, but aren't possible in all areas. Around a third of Ukraine's power stations are now in ruins. Planned blackouts are being used to try to restore stability to Ukraine's troubled grid.
Elena and her husband Yaroslav are getting used to life with frequent blackouts. The family, who live on the outskirts of Kyiv, have stopped counting how often this has happened over the last few weeks. And with Russia increasing its assault on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the power cuts are getting longer and more frequent.
That's probably the worst, because we can stay with no water for some time. We can stay with having no hot food for some time, but with no telephones on, it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Energy companies are publishing daily schedules of planned blackouts to help, but they are struggling to stabilise the grid. Yaroslav says outages here can last nearly 12 hours a day. He and the family have now decided to take a trip away to escape. It's energy facilities like this hydroelectric dam in Zaporizhzhia that Moscow's missiles are targeting. According to the Ukrainian government, Russia has destroyed about 40% of the country's energy infrastructure. Step inside a nearby hospital and you can see the impact on civilian life here. This doctor needing a headlamp to look at an X-ray. But in the face of Russia's aggression, there is some light amongst the darkness. This group of volunteers in Kyiv, many of them parents and children, are making candles to send to troops on the front line to keep warm. They call themselves Ukrainian Space Intelligentsia and have already delivered more than 3,000 candles to soldiers in the trenches.
The candles can be used to dry up a trench, cook food, which is very important, boil some water and warm up. These cans come with a cover, so you can close them, throw them into boiling water, boil and put them under your coat. You can do this many times.
For now, the spirit of these Ukrainians remains strong. But for how long, as this energy crisis deepens, challenging everyday life here and hope for the future?
DW correspondent Nick Connolly is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, for us. Nick, how much longer can Ukraine endure these constant Russian attacks on critical infrastructure, power and water supply?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. For now, they are holding up extraordinarily well. If you look at the past few weeks, how things have gone, basically every Monday we've seen major attacks by Russian cruise missiles and drones on the energy infrastructure, and that's not only power, but also obviously water supplies that are dependent on electric pumps. And every time, at least in cities here like Kiev, the supplies have come back on within the space of a day or two. The basically kind of emergency blackouts are now at an end. There are kind of planned blackouts to try and kind of stabilize the grid. For now, Ukraine has enough electricity. Lots of people, millions of people have left the country, and most kind of heavy industry isn't working right now. So there is enough power to go around. But the real problem is making it available to people across the country. And there is a sense that, the kind of resilience in the system is now coming to an end, that they have been able to basically roll with the punches for now, but that is becoming increasingly difficult.
Now, the EU's energy commissioner was in Kyiv yesterday. What kind of help did she offer?
Well, she is saying that the EU is now going to step in and try and coordinate supplies of spare parts, of all the kind of equipment needed here to keep on rebuilding Ukraine's energy system after every Russian attack. We've heard in recent days from Ukrainian officials that basically their supply of all the bits needed to keep the transformer stations, to keep all the kind of grid, the kind of connections going, that is now at an end. So basically Ukraine is now fully dependent on foreign deliveries for any future repairs, and she kind of made it clear that the EU would coordinate the support between international partners and make sure that arrives here. But that's obviously a very uncomfortable situation for Ukraine to be in, having to kind of wait and to make sure that those deliveries also get here in time and not having the capacity to really affect or do anything to improve the situation. It's really a question of waiting and hoping that those promises are really kept.
Now, talking about international partners and help from these partners, the Ukrainian government says it needs even more air defense systems to protect itself from those attacks. Is Kyiv getting what it wants?
Well, it is getting systems, air defense, rocket defense systems from Western partners, but not on the scale that they would want here in Kyiv. We saw in recent weeks Germany delivering that IRIS-T system so new, so modern that the German army doesn't have it itself yet. But for now, it's only one system that is able to defend one agglomeration, one city. But obviously not enough if you think that this is a war that is being fought over hundreds and thousands of kilometres of front lines. More are expected to come. The same goes for American-produced NASAMS systems. There's also been some promises recently from Italy and France. But also it's a question of munition. Even if you have these systems, do you have enough rockets, enough munitions to really use them on a daily basis? I think the kind of fact here is that no country in Europe and across most of the world has fought a war at this intensity for decades. So even if there is the willingness to help, most countries don't even have these rockets, these munitions on, ready on hand, in stock to send Ukraine at the pace wanted here in Kyiv.
DW correspondent Nick Connolly there in Kyiv for us. Thank you, Nick. Now, Russia says it has completed its chaotic recruiting of 300,000 reservists for its war in Ukraine and that no more are needed for now. But many fear President Vladimir Putin will indeed call up more. One man in St. Petersburg told us he's also received marching orders despite being in a wheelchair.
Ilya Pekarev has been in a wheelchair for 26 years. A few days ago, he was surprised to find an army draft notice in his mailbox. His call-up means he's supposed to go and fight in the war in Ukraine, known in Russia as a special military operation. Here's my name, Ilya Pekarev, my date of birth, my address, and the order to report to the military authority on a certain day. I felt nothing but amazement and certainty at how absurd the whole system is. Ilya's disability is due to a mistake made by doctors when he was a baby. The musician has never served in the army. His condition should have been available to drafting authorities in St. Petersburg. Ilya decided to ignore the call-up letter. He was surprised when there was no reaction from the military. Ilya says his story is not unique. I know a man who's missing a leg and who also received the same notice as me. He then lost his only leg in the army. His case is even clearer than mine, and I'm certain they knew about his case. Russia's chaotic mobilization has been reported on extensively via social media. Elderly men, men with disabilities, and men with serious chronic illnesses were called up. Some were sent home from the training centres. Despite the mobilization being declared over, there are fears there may be another wave of conscriptions. Ilya Pekarev is also worried about the future. Life is more difficult now. I worry more about the future. I can't plan anything anymore, at most until tomorrow. An uncertain time for Ilya Pekarev, with the fear of being drafted hard to shake.